Are you a Hawkeye fan living in Story County? Do you feel isolated, like you're alone in a maze of red? Well, you're not the only one. And that's why we here at StoryCounty.News have launched a brand new section of our website, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, which will feature our weekly podcast, Brada's Branded Thoughts, as well as other Hawkeye-related content for all you Story County residents who bleed black and gold, or if you live in Western Iowa, Eastern Iowa, or somewhere else other than Ames and you're a Hawkeye fan, we'd love your support. All of our content is free, so again, give our Facebook page a follow, give it a like, and give our Twitter page a follow as well, at From the Hawkeye on Twitter. The more likes, the more follows, the more support we get, the more content we can continue to push out, and it's all free. It's From the Hawkeye of the Storm, hosted by StoryCounty.News, for the best Hawkeye content in the area.
And with that we say, let's get it started. In here. Thursday, October 4th, and week 1 of this weekly podcast. I don't really know what to call this, so we're just going to call it Brada's Branded Thoughts for now. So what we're going to do is each week have a different guest. Sometimes the guest will be of local significance, or of no significance at all. But we will see each week. I'll announce it each week prior to the release of each podcast. Each podcast will probably be released Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday of that week. This week it is Wednesday, or Thursday. Stay posted, though, for each week's podcast start date. And you'll be able to access it through Facebook. We'll also be setting up a blog spot somewhere, something like that. iTunes has not invested any time in me yet, so we'll see what happens. Still working on a deal with that. Let's get going here. Guest today is Alex Brada, and we're going to talk a little bit about some different things. Mainly this podcast is going to be about sports. It's going to also be about some local things going on in the central Iowa area. Now, Alex, the first thing we're going to talk a little bit about today is the NFL. Week 5 now, going into week 5. Tonight, Bills-Browns, Thursday Night Football. Obviously not a huge matchup for most people, except if you're in fantasy. And right now, the fantasy league that we're involved in, which is league managed by
Tyrone Davis.
Who else? That fantasy football league race is actually very close right now. I believe it's a 3-way tie for first place in the newbies division, and then a 3-way tie for first place in the vets division. I am at 2-2, right, a game back of those teams in the vets division, so I'm in 4th place there. However, we want to preview a little bit on this week. Some of the matchups going into this week include you and who else?
I believe it's Jake this week.
Team Jacobo Guapo, is that what he's...
Yeah,
where did that come from?
Nowhere, obviously.
I'll have to get him on here, maybe make a phone call at some point. But a little bit about the history of these two going at it. Team Jacobo El Guapo is, I believe, 2-2. He's tied for that spot in the newbies division. Taking on Team Jordan from the vets division, who is tied for first place over there, after beating SWAT team Tyrone last week. So that game could have big implications in the playoff race. Top 4 teams total in the league make the playoffs. Top 2 from each division as of right now. That could end up changing, depending on rule changes. Obviously, Tyrone controls all of that. He makes the final call. He does what he wants. So his team managers ourselves, we kind of have to just go with the flow. So the scoreboard looks like this weekend. It is SWAT team taking on Brian Ramirez, and that, I want to give you an update, that has been changed to Lee Krukow. It is still Team Ramirez, technically, but it's been changed to Team Krukow. That is Lee. Then Team Jake, or Jacobo El Guapo, taking on Team Jordan, and then Team Cobras, which is Noah Krukow taking on Josh Alvarez, who, by the way, has not won this, or has he won one?
I believe he's won one game. Yeah.
Won last week. He won last week, so he's got one on the board. That was a big win for him last week after really just taking a poo. I mean, it's been a season of poo, and it's just one of those things that I don't know how you survive with no peaches or pears to push that stuff through. It's tough because you go 0-4 and you're looking at no playoff appearance or even close. And then obviously too, myself taking on ITGKTD. I don't know where the heck that came from. Central. That is Team Makaya. That game, my game is projected a 1-point favorite for myself. And then Team Chubb and Team Shaley also going on. So fantasy football pretty boring right now because we've got a pretty close race and nothing going on right now. It's SWAT team at 3-1, Shaley's team at 3-1, Jordan at 3-1, myself at 2-2, Alvarez at 1-3, and then in the other division, Cobras, Chubb, and Jacobo El Guapo all at 2-2, and then Micaiah and Brian, or as Lee now, is 1-3. So looks like the best degree of fantasy football is taking place in the Vets division. Jacobo El Guapo was at the top in the Noobs division last week, but took a mighty fall, as Fall Out Boy would say.
Yeah, he definitely benefited from recent rule changes.
Yeah, that was my doing in catching that the quarterbacks were receiving points for incomplete passes. I'm not sure where that fits in well. Might as well be giving them points for interceptions and stuff like that as well. But moving on from that, we'll see what happens tonight. I know a few players involved tonight. Fred Jackson, myself, is involved tonight, taking on the Browns. C.J. Spiller out with an injury. What's Fred Jackson's chances of getting a lot of carries tonight?
Well, he's facing a pretty stout Browns D, but he's a vet and he knows what he's doing, so he should be all right.
There are talks about the Browns making the playoffs now, which I don't know how. Both teams are 2-2 going into tonight, so actually this game you would almost call a pretty big game for both teams because both teams can move to 3-2 and a winning record, which both teams have not been able to see in recent years. Hoyer, the new quarterback, the alum out of Michigan State years ago, he was the third stringer behind Whedon, and now Whedon's out, Hoyer's in. People think Hoyer's giving him a shot. I don't see it, but apparently that's the talk of the Cleveland Nation now, that somehow the Browns could end up making the playoffs. I just don't see it. We'll see it tonight. That's a big game tonight. Taking on an improved Bills offense with E.J. Manuel at quarterback and Stevie Johnson out there as well, as of course with C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson. Both guys beat up tonight, but it looks like Fred Jackson, at least for him, he'll be ready to go for the game tonight. We'll get back to some NFL with some picks later, but I want to go right to college football. The talk of college football this season has been Johnny Manziel. After winning the Heisman last year as a freshman, the first freshman to ever win the Heisman Trophy, he goes on a charade, basically. And we'll get to the details of that charade in just a few moments. But what would you say if you were to give some advice to a young man who won the Heisman as a true freshman? He can't go to the NFL because of rules involving how many years he stays in college now with football. What would you give as far as advice to him on the rest of his sophomore season? Because it looks as if he'll probably go pro at the end of the season, but you never know with guys like this, and especially if he continues to make mistakes. What kind of advice would you give to him as far as finishing out this season and his chances going forward in the pros and perhaps even further in college?
I think he just needs to get back to work and keep his personal life out of the media, because that can be the undoing of pro athletes and college athletes. this period in time.
The sad thing about Johnny Manziel is everybody viewed him almost as myself included, didn't know a lot about him, but kind of viewed him as one of those classic American icons coming out of high school, and he does what he does. Looks like a pristine guy. He goes out there, looks like a nice young fellow, and I'm not saying he's not, but just with a bad stretch. And as we're looking at a picture here of him at a Texas Longhorns party, it's just not becoming of a college athlete, and especially a college athlete that's an underclassman and who's representing an entire university that just got transformed into the SEC, had a lot of success under him. You'd think he'd want to keep that legacy going, because it would be a legacy. First year in the SEC, which is, I think many would argue in recent years has been the best conference in the country. And he just kind of made a bad name for himself and for Texas A&M. But Johnny Manziel has played well. He still put up a lot of yardage. We're just going to go through here a little bit of what happened. He has, let's see, outside of football, I'm looking at here, he's had, starting in June 2012, it was kind of the start of everything. He was arrested on the 29th. This was actually before he was chosen as the Texas A&M starting quarterback. So actually, not a lot of this was paid attention to much, just because of the fact that he wasn't in the spotlight. Now he is, and now these things are coming out. He was arrested and charged with 3 misdemeanors because of disorderly conduct, and then failure to identify himself and possession of a fictitious driver's license. These are from College Station in Texas. And in July, he pleaded guilty to failure to identify, and the other 2 charges were dismissed. Now, the police reports state that Manziel was with a friend who directed a racial slur at a man on the street. The man approached the 2 of them, trying to get at the friend, but Manziel placed himself between the 2 men, saying his friend didn't mean it, and he was going to take him home. The man continued pushing against Manziel to reach the other, and eventually Manziel pushed back. Push comes to shove, literally push comes to shove, and the law gets involved. That's just 2012 in June. And then we talk about 2013, after he wins the Heisman. He was invited to the prestigious Manning Passing Academy, which is one of the greatest NFL preparations you can possibly have. Obviously hosted or created by the Manning family, who have been a couple of the greatest NFL quarterbacks. I don't think anybody, especially Peyton this year, has proved it of all time. And talks with Joe Montana and John Elway and those guys. But he leaves all of a sudden. Nobody knows why. He just leaves. The rumor was that he was oversleeping and that he can't wait to leave College Station. He actually tweeted that. And so just not really behavior you'd expect out of a young man who just won the Heisman and is just an icon in America and for that university. And then shortly after that, he was kicked out of a University of Texas party. I'm not even going to go into why he was at Texas. I don't know why in the world you would step into a rival's turf and go to a party, and not only that, but get into trouble at the party and get kicked out. So he's kicked out of there. And then there was, in August of just this year, just a couple months ago, the NCAA started an investigation over rumors that he was accepting money for his autographs. Now, money for autographs, I'm not going to... There are differing opinions on that. It's similar to the pay-for-play idea in college football. People have different opinions on it. But I'm going to give my opinion here, and I want you to give yours. My opinion on the entire situation is not specific towards the rule. My opinion on the specific situation is going back to the fact that Johnny Manziel is an icon at Texas A&M. My belief, my thorough belief, is that this is a rule designated by the NCAA, that if it's a correct rule, if it's right, if it's fitting, if it's fair, I don't care. If it's a rule from the NCAA, then Johnny Manziel should respect that rule, because he was given a scholarship, he was given free tuition, he was given all this stuff, and he disrespects that by breaking the rules. Now, I don't know how you feel about that, but to me, a rule's a rule in the NCAA, and when he's given all this full ride, he doesn't need extra money, he doesn't need all that, he knows he's going to go to the NFL. Why do this?
Well, first of all, I'd like to ask if it's actually been confirmed that he broke any rules, or is that just speculation?
Well, it's still speculation. I mean, it's speculation, but what happened was, I'm sure you're well aware of what happened with the first game of the season against Rice. He was taken out of the first half. He was suspended for the first half. It kind of takes me back to the whole incident with Alex Rodriguez in the MLB and everybody else who appealed after they got caught for steroids. They appealed so they can continue playing the season. Now, what happened with Texas A&M is the idea, and this is not facts. These are not proven facts. The idea was that Kevin Sumlin, head coach of the Aggies, decided to take him out of the first half because if they had taken him out, if they had played him for the first half, and they didn't need him to play for the entire game, then they wouldn't have played him for the entire game. But if they were in danger in the second half, they'd put him in the second half. Rice stuck around and played them. Now, the reason he would have done that, the reason Kevin Sumlin would have taken that action and played him in the second half, and not played him in the first half, and maybe not played him in the entire game, wasn't because he thought that that he broke a rule, or that he thought it was bad that he broke a rule. I'm not saying he didn't think it was bad if he broke the rule, but it was because by NCAA rule, if it was found out later that he had broken a rule, the games that he was a part of would have been vetoed, and they would have been erased, and that would have ruined a possibly perfect season. So the big thing with this is that Kevin Sumlin took him out. Rice hung around. They put him in. Johnny Manziel played him. Unbelievable in the second half. Won the game for the Aggies. That's all fine and dandy. It's still speculation. However, I'm just going to read the report here. This is officially the report. August 4th, ESPN reports that the NCAA was investigating whether Manziel accepted payments from autographs that he had signed in January. It did not find any evidence. The NCAA did not find any evidence that he accepted money, but he did reach an agreement with the Texas A&M to suspend him for the first half of the season opener against Rice due to an inadvertent violation of NCAA rules. So we don't know what the specific violation was, but we do know that there was something that happened that Kevin Sumlin felt needed consolation with the NCAA by suspending him for the first half. He's settled down, and his numbers are completely different than what we're talking about because he's continued his tremendous play. And I think if he hadn't had these problems, I think we'd be talking more along the lines of who in the world can challenge him for the Heisman this year. But what's your reaction to the way the NCAA's handled this and the way that Kevin Sumlin of the Aggies handled it? Because personally, I believe that Kevin Sumlin has turned a blind eye. Whenever he's been interviewed, he's not really come forward with it. He's gotten tired of answering questions, which I understand that, but you've got to answer questions if they're pertinent to the university, and right now these are very pertinent because Kevin Sumlin knows, and he's going to say it's the team. Kevin Sumlin knows this kid is representing the entire university right now. I feel like Kevin Sumlin has not addressed the issues he should have, and that Texas A&M has not respected the NCAA as they should have, and Johnny Manziel certainly has not done so.
Well, I do think that he should know better than anyone that the NCAA is very strict, so if he in fact did do anything, did accept money for autographs, that's pretty stupid on his part, but I can kind of see where he's coming from. I mean, a college kid might need extra money. He hasn't received any money yet, but that's not to defend him or anything.
We're going to move on from this whole Johnny Manziel situation, but I just want to add this real quick. If anybody here listening to this today remembers a guy he goes by the name of Jamal Lewis. His name goes by the name of Jamal Lewis. Anybody remember that? Do you remember him?
No.
Former Ravens running back. Okay. This is what Jamal Lewis said. This he said to TMZ per NFL.com. I do not think, and this is just a little bit ago, this is actually, I believe, this week. He says, I don't think he'll do good on or off the field. I like him, but as a professional quarterback, I don't. He's a great college quarterback. Then he was asked if the Heisman winner would turn out like Tim Tebow, and we all know Tim Tebow's at right now, and we won't get into that. But he said yes. And he said, especially in terms of fan excitement. He says it brings good excitement, people want to see, that's it. What is your reaction from these statements?
Well, I think that I wouldn't compare him to Tim Tebow because he seems more skilled in the quarterback passing department, but I can see where he's coming from as far as media hype, because they both are very hype collegiate players. So
now, we're going to take a little break from this Johnny Manziel thing. We may come back to it, and I'm not guaranteeing that because I'm kind of, to be honest, it's similar to the Tim Tebow situation in that I'm getting tired of talking about it. Tim Tebow is, it's still being talked about whether he'll get another job and whatnot. Listen, the bottom line is he can't play quarterback in the NFL. He's got no passing ability, and really the run game is insignificant because that NFL defenses have figured out exactly how to contain him. There's no way for him to play quarterback in the NFL. Now, you put him over at fullback. Okay, maybe there's a place for him at fullback somewhere. I don't know. Maybe you put him over at special teams. I don't know. But the bottom line is he's not an NFL quarterback, and he's not the Tim Tebow we saw in college. So let's forget about that. Johnny Manziel is a completely different issue. I'm done talking about his violations. I think he's a tremendous football player. His statistics are amazing, and they're continuing to get better, and I commend him for being able to fight through this controversy. Not questioning I am questioning, but I'm not bringing in his personal limelight into the situation. So, moving on from Johnny Manziel, let's talk a little bit more about college football itself. Past Saturday, Georgia come from behind victory over LSU in the final seconds. Big win for the Bulldogs. I know you're a Tigers fan. Do you think Georgia's already got a loss? Now, LSU's got a loss. So there's two SEC teams that have a loss. South Carolina has a loss. Do you feel like the SEC is as strong as in past years? Because I know in past years, there have been undefeated teams, but they're always beating up on each other. So it ends up being LSU and Alabama in the final, in the championship game, because both teams beat each other, whatever. They're number 1 and number 2. They both have one loss, and teams from other conferences, like Boise State, smaller conferences don't get into the championship game. Do you think the SEC is as strong as it has been?
Well, I think they are strong. I don't know if they're the strongest conference, but they're still competitive. I don't think that anybody else is too much better at the moment.
Now the question is Alabama as strong as it has been? Because I know we looked at that Alabama-Texas A&M game, and I don't know if you got a chance to watch that or see parts of that, but that game did not look like any Crimson Tide team I've seen in past years. To me, their defense looked pathetic. It looked pathetic, and they gave up huge numbers to Johnny Manziel. I know Johnny Manziel, and this Texas A&M team is still strong, but Alabama's prided itself on a huge offensive line, good running backs, and just a stout defense that doesn't give up anything. To me, they don't look as strong, and I think the SEC is in for it. This is my personal opinion. I think the SEC is in for it when we come bowl time. I think they'll get the favor that they always get. They'll still get 2 or 3 teams in BCS bowls, maybe even more. I could see 4 teams maybe in BCS bowls: Alabama, LSU, Georgia, and South Carolina. But I do not see them winning all those games as they have in past years, and I think the BCS committee will see Alabama, and I think Alabama will go to the championship game. And I say that only because of Alabama's schedule. I don't think there's many teams in the SEC that can beat them now. They've already played Texas A&M, and that's me leaving Texas A&M out of the conversation for BCS Bowl. I say those 4 teams are going to the BCS Bowl. So, I mean, I don't see 5 teams getting to the BCS Bowl. I think that's ridiculous. My point here is that I think Alabama is not as strong as in past years, and I think the Big Ten will beat up on them, and I think the Big 12 will even beat up on them. I think Oklahoma's underrated. I think Oklahoma State is a little overrated right now. They're still a good football team. I think they can beat some teams out there once we get to bowl season. I think the SEC, the Big East, or what was the Big East, or what is turning into something else, Louisville, I think, is a tremendous football team. I don't think they're going to get to a BCS championship game because I don't think their schedule allows it. The teams like Louisville and Clemson from the ACC, Clemson, I think, is a tremendous football team, and I think they should actually be in the conversation more for the BCS championship than any other team besides Alabama right now. Talk a little bit about here. Speaking of Alabama, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happened in past years and whether Alabama is good or bad for the sport. Two of the three two straight national championships. I believe it's three of the last four national championships. And I believe they've been a part of all of them. I mean, maybe I have to check that stat. But let's just put it simply and say that Alabama has been more than dominant in past years. Do you think a team like Alabama, or we could say the Miami Heat, or we could say in past years the New England Patriots, even though the Patriots didn't win a ton of Super Bowls, we feel dominance is good for a sport?
Well, first of all, I don't think that they're overly dominant. They've been doing well recently, but I don't think it really affects the sport too much. Because we've seen that in many different sports, and I don't think it affects it too much.
What I would just say about that is I don't love dominance, but I think it makes the sport better when that dominant team is challenged. I think Texas A&M Alabama last year was one of the greatest football games that college football has seen in several years, and that's only because of Johnny Manziel coming out of somewhere other than Alabama. You know, he's not Mark Ingram, another Heisman winner. He's not Trent Richardson, who was another Heisman candidate. He's not A.J. McCarron, who's another Heisman candidate. So he came out of somewhere else, and he beat the champions. And to me, that's what makes dominance okay for college football or any other sport, is when somebody can dethrone them. Not saying that I always hate dominant teams, but I think it makes college football better, and it brings more excitement when a team comes out of nowhere, nabs a guy like Johnny Manziel, and they go on a tear as the underdogs and beat the champions. I was getting that stat about the BCS National Championship games, and as far as dominance goes for Alabama, yes, they've won the last two BCS National Championship games. And obviously last year they beat Notre Dame. That was 42-14. Blowout. Year before that, blowout over LSU, 21-0. Year before that, they were not a part of it. That was the year they were not a part of it. So they've been in 3 of the last 4. They beat Texas that year, 37-21. So whenever they're in a BCS National Championship game, they tend to win. And then you look back at SEC teams. Now the question is SEC dominance. Do you feel the same way? Is SEC dominance good for the sport?
I don't think it is. I think that's one area that it wouldn't be good for the sport, but I don't think that they're as dominant as maybe they've been portrayed. Especially this year, they, like you said, the Big 12 is pretty strong, so I don't think they're extremely dominant.
I think the Big Ten is quite stronger than they were last year. I think Ohio State's a tremendous football team. I think Wisconsin's going to be one of those teams that are going to left out of the top 25 for quite a while just because of their loss that they were cheated on against Arizona State. I'm sure you remember that. The refs didn't spot the ball in time. Wisconsin loses that game, and obviously the close loss to Ohio State last week. They're not in the top 25, but I think they're a top 20 team. Looking down the list past years, last year, Alabama over Notre Dame. Year before that, Alabama over LSU. There's 2 SEC teams. Year before that, Auburn. They're an SEC team. They win the championship. Then it's Alabama over Texas, another SEC team. Florida over Oklahoma, another SEC team. Before that, LSU over Ohio State, another SEC team. Before that, Florida. Before that, we got a break in the action between SEC for a couple of years. We had Texas, USC, Oklahoma. But then before that, we're right back to LSU. Back in, 1998, Tennessee wins the championship. So SEC has dominated for the past few years. Is there a chance that we see, and I'm not asking you to pick who's going to be in the championship this year because it's still early, is there a chance we see teams from other conferences emerge and go to the championship and somehow beat out so there's no SEC teams?
I think it's definitely possible. I don't know that that'll continue more than a year, but I think this year is looking up for a lot of other conferences. So, yeah, I think it is possible.
I am going to say probably, I'm not saying it's impossible. I would probably say that that's not going to happen. I don't think there's any way that I don't see there being any way that no SEC teams get in. I'm not saying it's going to be Alabama. I think Georgia's strong enough. LSU could still make a climb. South Carolina, I would say has probably got the least chance out of those big teams. Texas A&M, they've got a lot of work to do. Their defense is not good either. But we've seen Alabama's beatable, Georgia's beatable, LSU's beatable. Everybody's gotten beat. Alabama has not, but Alabama, saw them struggle against Texas A&M. I want to see what they do against Georgia.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. I do think that that probably won't happen, but if there is a year that it could happen, I think this year is more likely if there weren't an SEC team in the BCS championship.
Well, and I think Ohio State has got an excellent. I think Ohio State has probably got the best chance of any team. I know their schedule. People don't respect Ohio State's schedule because it's against the Big Ten and they don't play. Blah 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 blah. Whatever. They were on the tables as they did last year. Obviously, last year they were undefeated, couldn't get in because of their NCAA violations. But this year they're eligible again. They started off as number 2 in the country. They have not lost. They had an injured Braxton Miller. He's back now. They got a backup in Kenny Guyton who's played tremendous. I don't see there being any way you go undefeated and you've got 2 one-loss and you've got a bunch of one-loss SEC teams. How in the world can you pick 2 SEC teams or an SEC team and another undefeated team over putting Ohio State in the national championship?
Yeah, they're looking pretty good this year. I don't think you could, as long as they continue.
Now Louisville is a different discussion. I mean, if Louisville goes undefeated, it depends on how they go. But if they don't hiccup, if they have no close games, and I mean close, I mean 10 or under. If they win every game by over 10 points and they don't look bad in any of the games, why aren't they in the national championship game? To me, Teddy Bridgewater is the Heisman favorite right now. I think he's played unbelievably. How do you not put? I don't care if they're Louisville. I don't care who they're playing. Obviously, I do care who they're playing, but I don't care to a point where I'm not going to put them in the SEC champion or the national championship game just because Georgia's played LSU and Alabama's played Texas A&M. To me, if they go undefeated and they prove themselves in what they have, they should be able to go to the championship game. It's a different discussion with Boise State, BYU, those teams who haven't played just are out of the BCS picture because they're not in major conferences. But to me, if you win in a major conference, which Louisville technically has done, they've been winning in the Big East, which is a major conference. They win in that conference. To me, there's no reason why you don't put them in the championship game.
And they should have an equal chance, but it has seemed like there's been some bias in the history of the current bowl system. That brings up other questions, but we won't go into that right now.
Well, next year we've obviously got the new system of a 14 playoff coming down to a national championship game. That will make things a little bit more fair. But again, I see speculation coming with that too because you wonder, okay, you have a 4-team race, but who are the 4 teams? Because there's always going to be teams. There's always going to be somebody left out. There's never going to be 4 teams. There's rarely going to be 4 teams that are. That's it. There's never going to be those 4 teams because you've always got somebody at their heels. What I will say is that system, although not reasonable to extend it, I think is the best thing that BCS has done ever.
It may not be perfect, but I think it's probably a step in the right direction. So, and then we can, seeing what happens with that, we can learn from that and make changes if they're needed.
Okay, we're going to go a little bit away from this in a minute. We were going to talk a little bit about Alabama. We're going to go to a quick break in a second. What we're going to do first is we're going to play a little bit of a clip here. This is, we were talking about Alabama, whether they're good for the sport, and this is a clip, and I'm not dissing Alabama outright, but we're going to play a clip of, I don't know if you've heard of him, his name is Harvey Updike Jr. This is what he said. He called in to a radio station. You may have heard about this, may not have. Purpose of playing this is not to beat into the ground but something that's already been talked about, but it's to demonstrate how big football is in Alabama, whether that's good and whether their dominance is good. This, and I'm not saying that everybody's like this in Alabama. I'm just giving an example. I know it's anecdotal evidence. We're going to play it anyways. This is a phone call into the Paul Feinbaum radio show just couple of years ago. Here it is.
Al is in Dadeville, Alabama. Hey, Al.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Well, thanks.
When Bear Bryant died, I was living in Texas, and I really didn't understand the Alabama-Auburn rivalry. But a good friend of mine that lived in Birmingham sent me a copy of the newspaper showing the Auburn students rolling Toomer's Corner celebrating Bryant's death.
Now stop. I even though I know what you just got through saying, and even though I know you're quoting from a newspaper, I just have the most difficult time ever believing that Auburn students rolled Toomer's Corner when the news broke that Coach Bryant died. Does anyone else remember that? I don't.
Do you want me to send you a copy of I still have a newspaper clipping.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of awkward here because I'm not doubting your truthfulness. I'm just, are you guys in the other room in as much shock as I am? That is just one of the most shocking things I've ever heard. I do not want to believe that is true.
Okay, let me finish my story.
Okay.
This year I was at the Iron Bowl.
There's no way that could be true.
Well, okay. This year I was at the Iron Bowl.
Okay.
And I saw where they put a Scam Newton jersey on Bear Bryant's statue.
Okay, man. Again, that's 28 years later.
Okay. Well, let me tell you what I did. The weekend after the Iron Bowl, I went to Auburn, Alabama, because I lived 30 miles away,
Sure.
and I poisoned the 2 Toomer's trees.
Okay. Well, that's fair.
I put Spike 80 DF in them.
Did they die?
Do what?
Did they die?
They're not dead yet, but they definitely will die.
Is that against the law to poison a tree?
Well, do you think I care?
No.
Okay, I really don't. Hey, and you can tell Tammy, I hope, never mind.
Okay.
Roll down Tide.
So we're going to stop it right there. I completely agree with Paul Feinbaum. Paul Feinbaum, to me, is one of the most respected, and he's made a name for himself on his radio show, which is all across the South. His SEC analysis and college football analysis on ESPN. I completely agree with him. You're talking about something that happened years and years ago, rolling Toomer's Corner celebrating Bear Bryant's death. I'm not going to speculate whether this happened, whether it didn't happen. There's certain things you've got to leave in the past. And when you're talking about college football, killing trees, and they put a Scam Newton jersey on Bear Bryant's death. First of all, the guy's name is Cam Newton, and he's calling him Scam Newton because of the NCAA investigations on him. But was it ever found out that Cam Newton was a complete scam in the NFL, that his father, blah, 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 blah? No, why are we... Okay, let's not bring that into the subject, in the discussion. The whole point here is, what kind of fan takes his college football allegiance to a point of, and I'm not saying rolling Toomer's Corner when Coach Bryant died is a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm saying there's things you have to move on for. That is a horrible thing if it happened. But how can you, as a fan, represent a university, especially publicly, if you call on a radio show, how can you represent a university this way? And how does that really show Alabama as a good part of college football?
Well, it doesn't, and you can't fix stupid. There's stupid fans on it for every team, but obviously the university looked down on that. They're not commending him for that. So, it could happen with any heated rivalry, and there are a few like that. But it's just the individual's choice. It shouldn't reflect at all on the school. Unfortunately, it does, but it shouldn't.
And I'm not using this recording, and he had a whole legal thing, and he's been in jail, and blah, 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 blah for this. It turned into a big production. He actually called back in to apologize for this. I'm not gonna say one way or the other whether that was appropriate for him to do. Because you're talking about people's lives. Well, not almost. People's lives are affected by this. People care about nature, and especially people who are university alums who, a lot of their life is Alabama or Auburn. Not because of college football, but because of everything surrounding that. And you kill part of nature because of your stupidity. I'm not using this to argue for or against Alabama or Auburn. I don't care about Auburn. I don't care about Alabama. My point here is, is there's certain things, Alabama, if they don't want to be hated, there's certain things, I know there's always going to be idiots, but there's certain things you just cannot do. And to me, you cannot invade the sanctity that Auburn had with trees. You can, and if you're going to dominate, you're walking on thin ice. Not saying you should have to be more careful than everybody else, but you got to have some decency, and you can't be doing stuff to ruin your reputation.
And it was terrible what he did, in that those trees are very old. I'm not sure how old they were, but
and I believe they're still alive right now. But the process.
I heard they'd gotten, or they were close to dying recently. I'm not for sure. But.
I mean, as Paul Feinbaum stated, in kind of his way of what he said, the point was not what Auburn did or what blah, 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 but the fact that you take it one step further and you do something to this degree is horrific, and I'm glad he got put in jail for it. I'm glad he served his time. I'm just saying there's certain fans who get too involved with college football and sports in general and do stupid things like this, and when that happens, you hurt Alabama's reputation. And there are a lot of Alabama haters out there, mostly because of their dominance. This does not help. It doesn't help at all. And when he called back in to apologize, it was interesting because he actually said the same thing he said when he left. He actually said, roll blank tide. Again, he said that again after he apologized, after he had all this stuff happen. He says it again. I'm not saying that I think that the Alabama fans are the worst people on earth, but I don't know what to say. It's just to me, it's
just one moron's choice. It shouldn't reflect on the university, but Alabama does have so many fans, and when you get a heated rivalry mixed in with that, they make stupid choices, and it does reflect badly on the school. It shouldn't, but that's just how it is.
And again, I want to emphasize this. Focusing specifically on how much he cares about college football. He poisoned the trees. He apologized to people. People were in tears over this. Suffering people. Literally. And he calls back and then says this.
Okay, I really don't.
Okay.
Roll down tide.
He said that twice. He says it again after he has all these legal issues. He has to appear publicly to apologize. To me, it's not good for Alabama. I'm not saying there's other fans out there, but as a fan, every fan, you can't do that kind of stuff. It's just ridiculous because it's not only going to ruin your reputation, but when you're an Alabama fan and you do that, my point here is you're an Alabama fan and you do that, and they are as dominant as they are, they're already on thin ground because people don't like them because they're dominant. You cannot do that. It just ruins your reputation. We're going to take a quick break here. Leave you with a little bit of a different sort of thing. We're going to talk a little bit about some things that have been happening in Marshalltown recently. We're broadcasting from Marshalltown, Iowa here. And there have been multiple murders. And we're going to leave you with we're going to talk about those murders. We're going to talk about the status of the town. We're going to talk about what's going on. We're going to leave you with a new song here coming out of Travie McCoy and Jason Mraz as we go to our break. Just be about it'll be about 3 minutes along this song. Again, we're going to talk about that. We're also going to have our pick'em section. We're going to pick college football games. We're also going to pick our NFL games of the week. And we're going to preview next week's discussion topic as well as previewing the Iowa game. My mind's on Alabama and Harvey Updike Jr., unfortunately. We're going to preview the Iowa game against Michigan State this weekend. So stay tuned. We're going to be back in just about 3.5 minutes with more podcasting here. We're about 40 minutes in here. Podcasting may be different lengths each week, but we are going to be back in about 60 seconds. We leave you with Jason Mraz, Travie McCoy. This is new song, Rough Waters.
was tougher, but the fact I came back to remind you I love you. And if that's not enough, well, I can one up you. I pinky promise touch thumbs, I never make you suffer. And all I ask in return is some reciprocation. I'll be your oxygen when you're running out of patience. So take a deep breath and hold it tight. My heart is yours, just reassure me that you hold it right. Don't be offended, I'm just the cautious type to always be around to hold you down and never underlie. Never let go of me. Never let go. Hold tight, it's gonna get hard to breathe. Hold tight, baby, hold tight. Never, never to let you down. Even if we're going down. Never let go of me. When I'm sinking. This is my message in the bottle. I hope that you receive it. If it washes up at your feet, then open it and read it. To whom it may concern, insert your name here. It's destiny that we were both born in the same year. 3 months apart, but on the same sphere. Staring at the sun, inhaling the same air. This type of love we got, so never get it. I'll be the Leo DiCaprio to your Kate Winslet. Sometimes I panic, but I never take you for granted. I hold you till my lips turn blue like Jack and Titanic. And if I lose my grip, then just promise me this. You'll keep my love in the locket and always rock it like. Never let go of me. Never let go. Never let go. Hold tight, it's gonna get hard to breathe. Hold tight, mom. Hold tight. Never, never to let you drown. Even if we're going down. Never let go of me. When I'm sinking. Those times when like you find it hard to hold on to something that was never meant to be held on to. So you let it go. If it comes back, it was meant to be. If not, just let it be. Never let go of me. Never let go. Never let go. Hold tight, it's gonna get hard to breathe. Hold tight, mom. Hold tight. Never, never to let you drown. Even if we're going down. Never let go of me. When I'm sinking.
That is Travis McCoy, who, if you don't know who that is, he's the lead singer from Gym Class Heroes. He had the song Stereo Hearts with Adam Levine from Room 5. He's had Ryan Tedder work with him from One Republic. He's had Neon Hitch work with him. He's got quite a few pretty big hits. And that is new music. When I first heard that he was with Jason Mraz with the single, I didn't know what to think. It sounded like a weird combination, but it worked, and I love the song. That is Travis McCoy featuring Jason Mraz, Rough Waters. Getting back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, or what we previewed before the break, there have been some, let's just say, horrific events that have been taking place here locally. And I say horrific, I mean horrific. We're not talking about college football anymore. We're talking murders in Marshalltown. I don't know, when was the last one? Was it?
I think it was Monday, maybe.
And then there was a shooting weeks ago, and there was a murder before that, or something. But the main thing we're talking about right now is the murder on Monday, and just kind of this town in general. I'm not going to diss this town, but July 17th there was a man charged with murder in Marshalltown just this year. There was a shooting recently with a kid actually who was still in school at the Marshalltown High School, and now just in this past week there was another murder man charged with first-degree murder. I'm trying to get the report here. Most people who are listening here probably heard about this if you're from around Marshalltown. This is the report. This is Times Republican, and I have my own opinions on Times Republican, but I'm not gonna go there. The police arrested. This is October 3rd, so that would have been today. This article was just released. Police arrested 2 Marshalltown men Wednesday. That was yesterday for a murder. The victim's body was mutilated post-mortem. Jeremy Garton, who's 30, he's been charged with first-degree murder and carrying a concealed weapon. Max E. Nelson Jr., charged with accessory after the fact, abuse of a corpse, and first-degree theft. They have both these guys' pictures on the website.
And have they identified the victim yet?
I don't believe so.
They had not by yesterday, so I assume that maybe it was mutilated enough that they couldn't tell.
Yeah, Mike Tupper of the Marshalltown Police Department has not, the chief of police, he has not released a name. He says it's not been positively identified yet, so that makes me think the corpse was mutilated badly.
Wow.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's going on in this town. Just some crazy things. What are your thoughts on this town in general?
Well, to add into that, I believe Tuesday, there was a Marshalltown man pulled over who was a passenger in a semi, who was found with $2 million worth of cocaine in the back of the semi. So that's just another little event that's happened recently.
And this town is really, what's the word? Low. In society, in social class, and other rankings, whatever. But $2 million in weed almost seems like pocket change when we were talking about drugs.
That was actually cocaine.
Oh, cocaine. It seems like pocket change when we're talking about drugs in this town, and to me that's not good. When you're for a town for murders and for drugs and whatnot, and for bad drivers, we won't go there. We're going to talk about bad drivers.
We could do a whole show on that.
Well, I still go back to the story, and we've got a little extra time here. I go back to the story of the young child, who I was simply driving, and I went past the stop sign. It's a kind of a weird jogging road at a 4-lane intersection near a school. I went past the stop sign and parked and stopped too far ahead. Let's just say that. Marking wasn't clear. I went too far ahead. My mistake. There's a lady in the SUV who I obviously did not allow her to go. She had to go after me. And I looked in my rear view mirror, and that young child, who I would probably say 10 or under, well, maybe 10. Or maybe actually probably under, probably like 5 to 10. Somewhere in there. I couldn't really tell. He had put his arm out the window, and he had raised his middle finger straight towards me. And I don't know if the mother told him to, or what happened, or if she's just like, all right, Billy, that's okay. To me, that's sad when we have 5-year-olds flipping people off in this town, because of an honest mistake. So that's just kind of part of the epitome of Marshalltown. I think it's not saying Marshalltown's a bad town. There's some things about Marshalltown I love.
Well, in defense of that child, I do think that flipping the bird has become almost a greeting in this town. So maybe he didn't know the correct meaning of it. It's used so often, maybe it's simply used as a greeting. I don't know.
Well, if we get to a point where that's our culture, I think this town needs to be nuked or something. Because
I'll second that.
Well, yeah. Let's get on. Marshalltown. Sometimes Marshalltown talking about it depresses me. We're not going to diss Marshalltown anymore. We're just going to move on. Let's talk a little bit about fantasy football, because we're going to do some picks now. We talked about fantasy football earlier. We're the last segment of our show. We're kind of running out of time here. I said we had enough time, but we're kind of running out of time. Sorry, we're going to go a little over today, but we're going to do some picks first. So we're going to do a pick segment now. How we're going to do this is we're going to have one person take their pick for the week. For that, I will name a game. I will name a matchup, whatever, and I will ask you your opinion first, and I will go next. Pretty simple. Obviously, you can express why you feel that way. Blah 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 blah. You know what a pick'em segment is like. So we're gonna do that real quick. We're gonna start with fantasy football. We're gonna go to NFL. We're gonna finish up with some college football. So first of all, fantasy football. Who you got? SWAT team and Ramirez recently Lee.
Well, I'd have to go with the SWAT team because Lee hasn't really settled into that position yet, and Ramirez has basically been idle for the last few weeks, so I'd have to give it to SWAT unless something quite extraordinary happens.
I'm going to probably go with SWAT too. I think Lee is going to be one of them underdogs, though, because I think obviously he's got more football intelligence than Brian, and Brian didn't do anything with his account. It's an uphill battle. He's at 1-3, but I think he's one to watch out for. I think he's one to watch out for this week. I'm just trying to check projections here. Actually, Ramirez is projected about 42 points below SWAT, which seems like a lot, but actually we've had worse. We'll never know. I mean, you see who plays, and whatever happens. We'll see. Next matchup, myself and Micaiah.
Well, I'd have to go with yourself because Micaiah has been fairly weak this year. He might turn it around, but yeah, I'd have to go with you for this week.
It's hard for me to pick against me, and I don't see Micaiah pulling one from somewhere. I get D'Angelo Williams back this week. I get Fred Jackson tonight against a tough Bills defense, but without C.J. Spiller. Looks like maybe without C.J. Spiller. Andre Johnson is healthy. Looks like he's healthy again. Brandon Marshall's actually fighting an injury, but I don't see much of a problem. I think I win this week. And that's obviously biased, but, whatever. Okay, moving on. Jacobo El Guapo and yourself. This is going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I'm going to have trouble at the QB position this week because one of my QBs is on a bye week and the other has to play the Seahawks. So, and that's Andrew Luck. But we'll see. If he can perform over 30 points, I feel pretty good about that matchup.
I'm probably going to go with you, but I think it's going to be close. The projections right now is 3 points difference in favor of you. I think it's going to be close. I like the projections on that one. Next one is Cobras taking on Alvarez. Alvarez looking for another win. Trying to make it 2 straight.
Well, I do think Cobras has probably been the strongest team in the Noobs division. His record would be even better if it weren't for the rule change. But
that's right. He would have a 1-loss record.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we'd have to calculate that because if the rule change wasn't there, I may have won last week. I only lost by 1.3. But I mean,
theoretically, I don't know.
Whatever. If we had just taken away from that week, Cobras is let's just say that he's a few points from being a 1-loss team.
And Alvarez has been the weaker link in the Vets division.
He sucked.
Yeah, he sucks.
So would you say taking Cobras on that?
Yeah, I'd say Cobras.
And then I'm taking Cobras too. Chubbs and Shaley.
Well, I do think that Chubbs has, after taking over that account, he has done some house cleaning and gotten some better players in, but Shaley has been probably the best team this year, as she was last year, so I'd have to go with team win.
I'm going to go with Chubbs on this one. The only reason I say that is because I'm looking at his lineup now, and I think Bernard could have a big game because Ridley's been doing bad. Vereen's coming off an injury. I think Bernard could get some, or not Ridley, what am I thinking? BenJarvus Green-Ellis. I'm looking at New England thinking Ridley and Vereen. BenJarvus Green-Ellis has not been having a lot of production. He's playing Bernard. We'll see what happens there. Pierce, Ray Rice out with an injury. We'll see what happens there. And then you got Demaryius Thomas going against Wes Welker, so both from the same team. We'll see who's a bigger day. I think Thomas is, I just think they can pull it out. He's got Cook playing at tight end, who's going against Jacksonville, probably the worst team in the entire league. And so I'm gonna go on a limb here. I'm gonna say Chubbs wins that one. We're just talking a little bit about who you think's gonna win this league this year.
Okay.
I would have to probably say, well, go ahead. I'll let you go first. Who do you think is favorite to win this year?
I think SWAT has been strongest up until last week, but it could go either way. I do think it'll be someone from the Vets division. I don't see the noobs coming out, but then again, we didn't expect the result from last year either, so it could go either way.
I think SWAT's in the lead right now, but I do think it's a four-way race, and I think it's all. I think if you're talking about 5 teams, I think if 5 teams at the end of the day, I think it's Cobras and in the top 4 in the leader in the Vets division. Want to ask real quick though, chances that, well, it's tough. Chances that maybe Jake can pull one out of the water and win this year? Okay. We won't go there. Moving on. NFL now. Picks in the NFL this week. Browns, Bills tonight. Who you got?
Browns.
I have the Bills, and the reason I have the Bills is because I have Fred Jackson more biased there. So we're going to go Bills on that one, and I think
that's fair.
I think E.J. Manuel can play well. I don't think Hoyer. I'm not buying Hoyer so far as a quarterback. Patriots, Bengals coming up on Sunday.
Gotta go with the Pats.
And the Bengals are 2-2. They beat the Packers, had a nice win there. Bengals are, I don't know how they're 2-2. I don't know. They've lost to some teams. Who have they lost to? I'm trying to think who they lost to. Let me look it up here. They lost to. They beat the Steelers and they. Oh yeah, they beat the. They lost to the Browns last week. That was a bad loss. Lost at Cleveland though. That was 17-6. That's, I mean, yeah, Hoyer. Who knows what may happen? And then they lost to.
Carson Palmer. No, it's Andy Dalton now. He's had a tough time carrying all the load, and I know AJ Green hasn't produced in the last couple of weeks as he should have. So, but if they can turn that around.
And they lost to Chicago week 1. I mean, they've had good losses. The Browns had a great loss, but they lost to Chicago, who I think actually Chicago has a great chance of making a run in the playoffs this year. I hope they do. Got them in some of my fantasy, and I think they're a good team this year. You took Pats. I'm going to take the Bengals on this one. I think Patriots finally lose. They're undefeated, but I don't see getting much production out of Amendola. I'm excited to see Amendola come back because Amendola is on my fantasy team, but I don't see them getting much production out of running backs. I still think Ridley and Vereen are going to be awful. And I mean awful. Ridley's been awful. Vereen has been injured, so he's not been doing well. Obviously, he can't play. I think they're going to finally lose. I don't think they can continue to get the kind of production they have been. And this is at Cincinnati. I see the Bengals pulling this one out. Close game. I see Cincinnati winning it, though. Lions, Packers, Sunday. Who you got?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Might go with Detroit on that one. Packers have been subpar this year so far.
Well, they kind of suck. They're 1-2, and
they have sucked.
3-1 Lions look good. I tell you, I think they're the team to beat in that division. I think that division is no longer dominated by the Packers. I tell you, I think it's Bears and Lions. So
I think the 2 losses to San Francisco really just kind of crushed their spirit. So we'll see if they can pull out of that.
That being said, I'm going to take the Packers. And the reason I say that is because it's at Green Bay. I think the Packers desperately need to win. I think somebody will step up. But I still think they're not nearly as good as the Lions. I think the Lions are still the team to beat in the division. Them in Chicago. Interesting matchup. Dolphins got blown out on Monday, but they were 4-0 going into that game. Do the Ravens have a chance of beating the Dolphins? Or should I say the opposite way around? Do the Dolphins have a chance of beating the Ravens? The Ravens are 2-2. Dolphins coming in at home at 3-1.
I'd have to take Miami because I think their defense is going to shut down the Baltimore offense. I think they can score enough points to pull that game out.
I'm taking Baltimore in that game as well. I think it's going to be a tough coming off a big blowout victory, especially a quick turnaround from Monday to Sunday, which isn't real tough, but you're talking about a quick turnaround after being just blown over by Drew Brees and the Saints. I'm taking Ravens in that matchup. To me, the game of the week, and it's not a Sunday night game, it's not a Monday night game, it's not a Thursday night game, but the game of the week to me is Saints-Bears. Saints are 4-0. Saints look absolutely fantastic. Taking on, I shouldn't say that. The Dolphins were, they were 3-0. They weren't 4-0. They were 3-0, now they're 3-1. The Saints are 4-0, taking on the 3-1 Bears in Chicago. Who you got?
Well, that's classic offense versus defense, but I'd say the Saints. They're very high powered, and I think that Chicago's they've been good, but I don't think their offense can quite match with the Saints have.
I'm taking the Saints too, but I think the Bears are coming off a tough loss last week. Their first loss of the season too, in really a weird game against Detroit to me. I say Saints there as well, but I think that's gonna be another close one. Seahawks, Colts. Now, who you got?
Take the Seahawks. They're probably one of the strongest teams right now, in my opinion.
I think Colts make it close. Seahawks win it ultimately. Seahawks are the best team in the league right now to me. And I say that, yes, I know the Broncos are there, but I think the Seahawks are in a tie with the Broncos right now. I don't think the Broncos I know they've played tremendous, but I think the Broncos are in a tie with the Seahawks, so I say the Seahawks are the best team in the league, and the Broncos are the best team in the league. They're just tied right now to me in my mind. I say Seahawks in a close one in Indy. Eagles, Giants, two teams, NFC East, desperately need to win. One win combined between both of them, coming from Philly against Washington in Week 1. Combined, they're on a 7-game losing streak. Who wins between New York and Philly?
Well, I think New York has been atrocious so far, so I'd have to give it to Philly just for that fact.
Listen, the Giants aren't going to go 0-16. They got to find a win. They're at home. They're against a Philly team that just doesn't know their identity with looked like they maybe did their first week, but they're just trying to go too fast. To me, I just don't think they can keep up with Chip Kelly right now. I think they will get it together, but not this year at all. And I see the Giants get their first win of the season. This is an interesting matchup, too. A 3-1 Titans team. We didn't expect this. Jake Locker's been hurt, or he is hurt, taking on a 4-0 Chiefs team. In Tennessee, Sean Green's beat up, local Iowa guy. He's an Iowa Hawkeye guy. He's beat up, so they're kind of lacking at running back. They sell Chris Johnson, of course, but don't have that double threat with Sean Green. Who do you got, Chiefs, Titans, in Tennessee?
Well, I might have to go with the Titans on that one. I don't know that the Green being injured will affect him too much, but they have been playing very well this season, and Johnson he's been solid on the ground, so I'd have to go with Tennessee on that.
I don't know how they're going to do it. I'm picking Tennessee in that game. Locker, I don't know his status, but I don't see the Chiefs going. I hate to say that I don't see them being able to win, but how in the world are they going to be able to keep going? I mean, Jake Locker, he's got a hip injury. The report here, he's missing 3 games, so he's not playing. So, Matt Hasselbeck, who it is, somebody's going to have to come in there and play quarterback. I'm saying Titans, and I'm just reaching out on a limb on that one. Oh, this one just depresses me just to talk about it. I'm not going to explain it. Another one-win team between the two of them. Rams or Jaguars? Who do you have? In St. Louis.
Well, I'd like to say the Jaguars, but I can't see them winning any games this season, so I'll have to go with St. Louis on that.
St. Louis, Bradford's actually not done too badly. It's just poor crew. I mean, poor crew. I know Team Alvarez on our fantasy team had Daryl Richardson, who was their running back for quite a while. I don't know if they're going to switch that up or who they're going to play as their main running back. But Richardson was getting negative points. I mean, it was disgusting.
Yeah.
It was disgusting. And I just want to give a shout out to Brandon Pettigrew, Team Alvarez, one of his players. Also want to give a shout out to Southside. Panthers Cardinals now. Also on Sunday, starting the afternoon time period. That's coming in at 4:05 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:05 p.m. Central Time. Panthers Cardinals, both teams looking to get 500 or above. Cardinals are already at 200 or at 500. They're at 2-2. Panthers at 1-2, trying to get a win. And bump up to 2-2. 2-2. They had a huge win against New York. What do they need to do to win? Who's going to win?
Well, I think Arizona's got a good chance in this one. Carson Palmer hasn't really found his stride yet, but I think he will. And he's got several receivers, obviously Larry Fitzgerald to throw to, so I would have to go with them for their offense. But the Panthers, it will be a tough matchup, I think.
And that game is another one of those games I think is irrelevant, because I don't think either team will make the playoffs. But I think the Cardinals have the pieces they can maybe start to do something. If they can, Carson Palmer, I don't know what he's going to do. If he can begin to play somewhat of a franchise quarterback, maybe they can make a hunt for playoffs in the coming years if Mendenhall can stay healthy. I dropped his sorry butt just earlier. Excuse for the crudeness, but he just couldn't stay healthy, and I dropped him off my fantasy team. Well, he's a good running back if he can stay healthy. Maybe the Cardinals can make a push in the coming years. They still have Larry Fitzgerald, and he's not gone yet, so they've got some pieces. This game seems like the one that most people are focusing on this week. Broncos, Cowboys. Cowboys are 2-2. To me, the Cowboys have played better than a 2-2 team, but they're 2-2. The Broncos are the Broncos. We know all about them. Derek Decker has been amazing. To me, he's been amazing compared to past years. Obviously, they got Peyton Manning this year. Wes Welker's been Wes Welker. You've got No Sean Moreno, Ronnie Hillman, and Monty Ball, who's kind of struggled the first year, but all those guys are a part of that running back crew. And then we're not even talking about Demaryius Thomas. Von Miller coming back this season after being suspended for drugs. Is there any chance the Cowboys can win this game? It is in Dallas. Who wins?
I think they have a chance. I think their defense needs to play better because they've been a little, they haven't been up to par of what they have been the past seasons this year. So if their defense can at least slow down Peyton Manning, they don't have to hold him to 0 points. But if they can keep him in check, I think their offense does have a good chance of beating him. But I'd still have to go with the Broncos on that one.
I'm taking Broncos. I think the Cowboys are much improved. I don't think they're a 2-3 team, but I think they're going to be 2-3 after this week. That's another one. 2-2 versus 2-2. How in the world are the Texans 2-2? I don't know. They've played better than 2-2. 49ers. I don't know how they're 2-2, but this is a matchup between Texans and 49ers. An interesting Sunday night game. Who wins?
Well, I give that to the Niners, I think.
Obviously, you're a Niners fan.
Yeah.
You're also a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, though, so does that hurt your credibility at all?
Probably. But I'll have to go with the Niners just because I'm a Niners fan.
That's all right. Ty Davis is a Chiefs fan. And the Chiefs suck. Oh, I don't know where that came from. That must have been the wind speaking. Yes.
Somebody left a window open.
Oh, well. We're going to move on from that. I pick the Texans in that game. Whatever. Raiders and Chargers. That game, now, the reason we're talking about this game, because that game, I don't know if you heard, this is a little bit of a breaking news thing. This happened this week. That game has been moved back to 11:35. I thought it was 11:35 a.m. I was mistaken. That game is 11:35 p.m. Eastern. That game starts at 10:35 at night on Sunday night. Chargers Raiders, because of the Oakland A's in the playoffs, and they needed the field and it's just whole thing. So I had to move that game back. That will be on NFL Network in case you didn't know. Who wins that? That's 2-2 Chargers. Philip Rivers has been unbelievable versus 1-3 Raiders.
I think it's sad when baseball gets in the way of football, but I'd have to go with the Chargers. They've looked pretty explosive this year, and Rivers has been incredible so far, so I'd have to go with the Chargers.
I think the Raiders win because I think it's going to be an incredible environment, a night game in Oakland. You know Raiders fans are insane, and I think this actually will do them good. I will say this, though. I think, and this is a crazy to say, but I think the A's game affects this game in that I believe if the A's win, the Raiders win. And the only reason I say that is because of the fans. I know that seems like a long shot that the fans can make that big of an impact, but I think it's going to be a close game. Might as well give an edge somewhere. I'm going to say Raiders in a close victory, maybe even overtime in that game. Low-scoring game, even though Philip Rivers has been putting up huge numbers. I think it's going to be low-scoring. Monday night, Jets-Falcons. Jets are 2-2 behind rookie quarterback Geno Smith, and the Falcons have struggled without Roddy White in there. Or doing a lot, I should say. Who wins between Jets and Falcons?
I think the Falcons have been flown under the radar as they always do, but they haven't played as well as they have in past seasons. But I do think that they should be able to pick it up and hopefully get their season back on track tonight, so I'd have to go with Atlanta.
Yeah, they're not a 1-3 team, and the Jets aren't a above 500 team. Unfortunately, being a Jets fan, I can't deny the obvious. The Jets are not 2-2. They're not a good team. And I don't know how to speak about the Jets in a term that doesn't involve the word trash, but
How about suck?
well, and Geno Smith, he's trying out there, and they had some close contests. Patriots, they almost won that game. You beat the Patriots on Thursday night, you're 3-1. But I don't see him holding up. I think Geno Smith's too young. Mark Sanchez is out. I don't think he's the quarterback anyways, but they don't have a guy right now who can lead this team in the long term. They don't have receivers. They can make plays. Their defense is decent, but I gotta go with Atlanta on that. In a pretty much a blowout. I don't see, and even though they're 1-3, they got onto a Jets team. It's in Atlanta, blowout. Falcons win that game. We're gonna move on in a second here, to breaking news revolving. Well, we're gonna talk first of all about this breaking news involving the Chargers. So I want to confirm this. It is 10:35 p.m. Central. That's NFL Network Sunday night. So 2 games on NFL Network this week. NFL Network wins in this whole thing. Let's transition a little bit over to college football. Iowa taking on Michigan State this week. We haven't talked at all about Iowa. They are 3-1. And I don't know why I just said 3-1 because they're not 3-1. They're 4-1. Won 4 straight. Lost close to Northern Illinois week 1. Northern Illinois is a good football team. Struggled in parts against Missouri State. Ended up winning that by a couple touchdowns. And then they go back and they nearly blow out Iowa State. They give up a late lead, but they win that game late against Iowa State in Jack Trice Ames under first-year quarterback Jacob Rudock and beast of a beast Mark Weissman. Then they go out and they just pummel Western Michigan after some teams thought, well, they could maybe have an emotional letdown after a big win against Iowa State. They don't. They have a pummeling of the Broncos. Western Michigan, 59-3. Come back. They win their Big Ten opener on the road at Minnesota. What do you see this week against Michigan State?
I think it is in Iowa's hands if their defense can play the way that Ferentz would like them to. If key to that team is usually the defense, and if they can play well, their running game on offense is going to carry their offense, I think. So if their defense can play, I'd have to go with the Hawkeyes in that one. Iowa
has the 19th most rushing yards in the country. Their defense has actually allowed the 17th least amount of points in the country. Weissman's leading the nation in carries. That is incredible to me. He's got 119 carries, and he's averaging 5.2. That is absolutely incredible. He's only got 3 touchdowns, but he's been carrying the workload. And Ferentz has described him as a workhorse many times. And Rudock, to be honest, I really do believe that Rudock is the quarterback for years to come. He's a sophomore. He is he's got 4 interceptions on the season. He's had a couple bad ones. He's got 6 touchdowns. His first season. He can compose himself. He can run the football. He can look for the opening if he needs to. Take it out of the pocket. He's a great rollout passer. I think Rudock is the guy in Iowa City.
Well, I think they have a good 1-2 punch on the ground, so that does take pressure off of him. So hopefully he can get his feet under him, so to speak, and maybe get the passing game going too. Because if they can put together a passing game, combine that with the running, they should be good to go on offense.
Gavante Martin-Manley is really the number 1 receiver. I think there's no question about that right now for Iowa. Damon Powell, though, had a huge 74-yard touchdown screen pass against Minnesota, and he's had a few touchdowns this year. He's been the guy for the transfer from junior college who led the nation in junior college in receiving or in yards per catch. So he's maybe emerging as that second receiver. We also got Jacob Hillier, who's had some big catches, has had a couple touchdowns this season. Don Shumpert maybe getting into the mix a little bit. We've definitely seen C.J. Fedorowicz. I'd like to see him a little bit more. We've seen Ray Hamilton. Those were both tight ends. Maybe even Jake Doozy getting into the mix. He's tight end. And don't forget about number 4, Tavon Smith, another wide receiver maybe getting in action. And don't forget about Damon Bullock. I know you like Bullock coming out of the backfield. He's a guy who can mix up the run game and give Iowa a different looking run attack.
He comes in under the radar, but he is an excellent back, and he's a very powerful runner, so I think he does take some pressure off of Weissman, especially if he were to get injured, which can happen. Bullock can come in and take up some of that slack.
Now, Michigan State, their points against, they've allowed the 10th least points in the nation, but Michigan State has the number 1 rushing defense, or number 1 passing defense in the country, the number 2 rushing defense in the country, and the number 1 total defense in the nation. How in the world is Iowa going to score points against this team?
Well, like I said, it's going to depend more on their defense, I think. But if their defense can hold them to not very many points, then the offense won't have to work too hard, hopefully.
Passing yards for Michigan State, this is atrocious for their offense. 113th in the nation in passing yards. So they've not been an offensive team. And that's just not passing yards. Points 474, rushing yards 57. That's the ranking in the country. Their defense is amazing. Offense is horrible. And I'm not saying that means they cannot be able to put it together, because they've switched in and out quarterbacks, and they can play on offense. They've got guys out there. They've got bodies who can play in the Big Ten. And they're a ranked team. They've been a ranked team this year. So I see Iowa having to run the ball well. Even though it's going to be tough, Weissman is going to get beat up in this game. But they cannot go away from what they do well, and that's run the football. Run the football with Weissman, mix it in with Bullock. Get as much as you can. Ultimately, Rudock's going to have to pass with the air. But I think this defense will play well. I think the defense has to score a touchdowner. I think Iowa defense needs to get a pick 6, fumble recovery touchdown. They need something to create points. The defense has to create points for the offense. Not saying that Iowa offense can't win it, but I think that's important. Michigan State's averaging a touchdown defensively each game. That's an incredible set. They've got 4 on the season. Looking ahead to picks now. We're going to go a little bit off the NFL. We've done fantasy. We've done NFL. We're almost done here. Let's check the time here. We've got not a lot of time, so we're going to have to get down to these. We've got about 5 minutes, so let's hurry through these as quickly as possible. Scores from the NCAA this week. Same system. New picks. First of all, tonight, in-state rivals of Iowa, Iowa State taking on Texas tonight. That game on ESPN at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Who wins? Hook 'em Horns, Cyclones.
What's their records?
Texas is, I believe Texas is 2-2.
I do think the Cyclones are a good team. They did get beaten by Iowa, but I do think that they'll probably come out with that. They've been solid even despite that one loss.
Texas, Texas is in trouble. I think Texas, their program is in trouble. I think their AD just announced that he's retiring, and I think that's mostly because of the way this team has been playing. But ultimately, I think Texas is 2-2. They beat Kansas State last week, but Kansas State I don't think is that good this year. I think Texas wins on the road. Iowa State I think is better than they look right now, because I think they've got weapons. Bundridge is good at the receiver position. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Iowa State loses. And I don't think Iowa State's going to get any more wins this season. Bottom line is they play in a pretty tough conference in the Big 12. I think they've got a chance against Kansas State. They've got a chance against Kansas. And a chance against Texas tonight. Other than that, I don't see them winning a game. West Virginia looks good after they beat Oklahoma State last week. Iowa State not making a bowl game this season. Is that agreed?
I don't know if I'd go that far, but I don't think they're quite bowl material, but I could see them winning maybe 1 or 2 more games.
All right, now they're sitting at 1-2. They need wins desperately, so we'll see what they can do tonight. That game on ESPN. Western Kentucky, Louisiana Monroe. We're predicting this game also was on tonight on ESPNU at the same time. We got.
Have to go with Western Kentucky on that one.
I'm taking Louisiana Monroe. UCLA, Utah. UCLA, this is an interesting matchup because Utah at home trying to pull off the big upset. That game's on Fox Sports 1 tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. That game against the number 12 team in the country, UCLA Bruins. Who you got?
I'll take UCLA. They've been good this year.
UCLA, there's no way I can go away from them. Utah, they're not a bad football team. We'll see what happens. I don't see that much happening. Saturday night is the big night after that UCLA-Utah matchup. Again, I picked UCLA in that one, but going over from a similar team to BYU or to Utah in past years, BYU now becoming a real factor in football. Utah State is also becoming a real factor in football. Who you got? BYU, Brigham Young taking on Utah State. That game also televised at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, CBS Sports.
I think Utah State is underrated this year. I think they take that one.
I'm taking Utah State at home. They're a good football team. They're going to win that one at home. Nevada, SDSU, South San Diego State. Again, those are two tough teams. Colin Kaepernick coming out of Nevada years ago.
I might go with SDSU on that one.
SDSU at home, not going away from them. All right, we're not going to go through every single FBS game out there. What I will highlight real quickly is there's a possible, because of the government shutdown, that Air Force and Navy could be postponed because they're institutions for your government. That's going to be interesting to watch for. But the big game, big one to start off the season, top 25 matchup. Or start out the week on Saturday. Top 25 matchup at 11 a.m. Central Time on ESPN. Number 8, Florida State, taking on number 25, Maryland. Maryland, top 25 team for the first time this week. Who wins that? It's at Florida.
I'd have to take Florida State, but I'm not ruling out the chance of an upset there. I think it might be a close game. I think Florida State will probably come out with it.
I'm going with Florida State. If it was at Maryland, I'd give them a shot because I think Maryland's playing good football coming into the Big Ten next season. That'll be interesting to see. Will they become a factor in the Big Ten when they make their debut next year? Louisville and Temple at Temple. Louisville trying to stay undefeated.
Got to go with Louisville.
Louisville on the road taking on Temple. Temple has not been Temple in past years. Usually Temple's a pretty good football program. Louisville wins that one in a blowout. Kansas taking on number 20 Texas Tech in Kansas. Who you got?
I have to go with Tech on that one. I don't think Kansas is much of a football school.
Well, and Texas Tech has been pretty good. They're 20 in the country. Kansas, no. They've had to squeak by teams. They lost to Rice week 1. They're not going to win that game. Texas Tech, pretty easily, I think, over Kansas. Any chance, and I'm just going to say this, any chance Georgia State, and I want you to tell me any chance Georgia State at the Sun Belt Conference, FCS, I believe. No, yeah, it would be FBS. Georgia State. Any chance Georgia State wins, taking on number 1 Alabama?
No.
Maybe if McCarron gets hurt and basically all their starters and gets hurt and maybe their second stringers, maybe they could beat their third stringers. That's going to be a tough game.
I think they may need to hire Harvey Updike to do something.
Yeah, Harvey Updike might poison the Georgia palm trees.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. That's cruel. All right, moving on to more games on Saturday. We're going to hit up Clemson, number 3 in the country. They're undefeated, looking for a national championship. They go on the road to a tough matchup against Syracuse, new ACC team this year. Who wins that game?
I have to go with Clemson on that.
Yeah, I'm taking. By the way, I'm taking Alabama on the last one too. And I will go Clemson on that. I think Clemson will go to the championship game this year if they stay undefeated, and I think they have a good chance of staying undefeated. Kansas State on the road to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State coming off a tough loss to West Virginia. Kansas State coming off a tough loss to Texas. Who wins that game?
Well, I'll have to go with Oklahoma State, I think. They just look like a stronger team.
I'm going Okie State too. I think Okie State bounces back. Northern Illinois beat Iowa earlier this year. They went to a BCS Bowl last year in the Orange Bowl. They beat Iowa this year. They blew out Purdue last week somehow. And I know they haven't had these huge wins, but they beat Iowa on the road. They beat Purdue on the road. They've not made a mistake, yet they're not ranked. Obviously, they're in the MAC. Okay. They play Kent State. Part of MAC played it on Saturday. Kent State's a decent football team. What do you see from NIU on Saturday?
I'd have to go with Northern Illinois on that. They look pretty good.
I don't see Northern Illinois losing. I think they're going to go undefeated this year. I think they're going to have some tough ones. Bowling Green's a tough team in that conference. I see them winning. Georgia Tech taking on Miami at Miami. Who wins?
Miami.
I got Miami in that game. Georgia Tech is a decent football team, though. I think it's going to be close. Georgia on the road at Tennessee. Any chance Derek Dooley and the Volunteers win that?
Sure, there's a chance. I don't think they will, but
yeah, to me, Georgia's going to win quite a few more games. I think they could hiccup one more time, and that's why I say the SEC race for the national championship might not be as clear as people think. Oregon, Colorado, in Colorado. We got the Ducks and the Buffaloes.
I'll go with Oregon because I like the name Ducks.
Got some cool jerseys down there. I think they're ugly, but people like them. I'm going Oregon. Arkansas on the road at Florida. Former Iowa City High quarterback, City West quarterback, transferred from Iowa, A.J. Derby, after he punched out a bus window. We won't talk about that. In Iowa, he transfers to Coffeyville. I think it was Coffeyville. Regardless, he transfers out. Eventually transfers to Arkansas. He's been playing some quarterback at Arkansas. Any chance that Razorbacks can beat Florida?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of upsets on this ballot until later, and I'm going to get there in a second. Kentucky at South Carolina, any chance the Wildcats can take down the Gamecocks?
I'd have to go South Carolina on that.
Yep, they're at home, and I don't see them winning that. West Virginia taking on number 17 Baylor. We got
Baylor.
I'm taking West Virginia in this game, and the reason I say that, they're coming off a big win against Oklahoma State. I think emotion's going to be running high, and I think it's going to play their favor. We'll see what happens, but they looked pretty good against Oklahoma State last week. I say Baylor loses at home, and it's a crushing loss for the Bears. The big matchup to watch the two big matchups on Saturday night. Number 4 Ohio State taking on number 16 Northwestern. College game day will be there in Evanston. We got Wildcats Buckeyes.
I'll go with the Buckeyes on that, but I think it will be a close game.
Ohio State 24-23. Ohio State's going to I think Ohio State's going to run the tables here. Even though they play Iowa, I think they're going to have some close games. They've already had a close game against Wisconsin. I really think they're going to have a close game against Iowa because I think Iowa's going to make it close just about every team they play. And I think they beat Northwestern in a close one. The other big game, number 15 Washington trying to take down undefeated number 5 Stanford. Any chance that Washington can beat Stanford on the road?
I don't think so. I'd have to go Stanford.
And then finally Sunday, San Jose State taking on Hawaii. Hawaii is looking for their first win of the season.
Yeah, I can't go with Hawaii.
I'm going San Jose State on the road at Hawaii wins that game after coming off. A couple weeks ago, they lost to Minnesota, but actually challenged Minnesota. We'll see. I think San Jose State wins that game. That's at midnight, starting on Sunday morning, Saturday night. Going back to the Big Ten games, quick pick 'em. We're trying to get through this as quick time as possible. We're going to go, first of all, first Big Ten matchup, Penn State taking on Indiana.
I'll take Penn State with that.
All right, Penn State. I'm going to say Penn State, too. I think Indiana's offense is going to make this interesting, though. We'll see what happens. Illinois, Nebraska. Nebraska has looked bad. Bo Pelini, after he was discovered for calling his fans blankety blanks, kind of shambles right now down in Lincoln. Illinois, their offense has looked high-powered. Who wins that game?
I think Nebraska. I think they turned that around.
I think Illinois wins it. Nate Shieldhouse, if he can play well, Illinois has got a high-powered offense. More Big Ten action on Saturday. Minnesota, trying to bounce back from Iowa. They take on Michigan, who's had 2 bad games in a row. They struggled against Akron, almost lost in the final play. Struggled with Connecticut, they were down 2 scores. Who wins in Michigan? Minnesota, Michigan. Michigan's still number 19 in the country.
I'll have to go with Michigan on that. I think they'll turn it around against Minnesota.
No way can I see Minnesota wins that game, even though Michigan's looked horrendous. You said Ohio State over Northwestern. I picked the same one, Ohio State over Northwestern. So now we get to the big game, or at least the big game in Iowa, on Saturday. That is Iowa and Michigan State. In Iowa City. I think this is the Big Ten game of the week, and obviously besides Northwestern, Ohio State. And the reason I say that is because I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to determine a lot in the race for a Legends Division title. We got Michigan State, Iowa.
Well, I think Iowa can win if their defense does well, so I'll go with Iowa because I live in Iowa.
I'm going to go Iowa in a close game. I'm completely biased. I'm not going to go against Iowa, and I think Iowa is going to be able to run Michigan State, expose their defense a little bit. I'm not saying their defense is going to be completely exposed below, or that entire defense is just incredible. So I'm going to go Iowa in a close victory. 21-14. Yes, I think they're going to score 21 points on them somehow. I think one of them will be off a defensive score. Michigan State's going to find a way to score a couple, maybe off a defensive score too, but I think Iowa wins it by a touchdown. There'll probably be a field goal in there. Maybe mix it up a little bit. Maybe like 17-14 or 20-14, something like that. Around there, I think Iowa wins it in a fairly low-scoring game. Well, that will do it for podcast this week. Week 2 will be next week, and I tell you, I want you to give me a response. Facebook, we're going to open up a blog. We're going to try to get this on Facebook. Not sure how we're going to do it yet. We're going to figure something out, but if you're listening to this now, you've already figured it out, because we already got it figured out. So, we leave you with Semisonic as the day ends, and we move on to week 2, week 5 in the NFL, week 6 in college football, or not week 6, week 5. Bottom line, much football on this weekend.
Closing time, open all the doors and let you out into the world. Closing time.
I want to remind you, next week, it'll probably be Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday that we go on again, and you'll be able to hear our podcast. We also want to get some recommendations from you on what you want to talk about. Anything goes, as long as it's child appropriate and adult appropriate. So let us know. We will have a different guest next week. If you want to be a guest, let me know. We'll set it up. This is about an hour and a half podcast tonight. This is going to be it's going to be shorter. It's going to be about between 45 minutes and an hour, I'd say, typically. But we wanted to get a kickstart to it. Semisonic and I both say goodnight as we leave you with Semisonic closing time. Thank you to Alex Brada for coming on, being the guest tonight. Thank you for giving your opinions on many different topics, and of course your picks. We will have a different guest next week, and I will be announcing that guest after I get some reaction from you guys on how you enjoyed the show this week and some of your recommendations. So for Alex Brada, for Corey Brada, myself, and for this podcast, we say goodnight. Have a nice night. We'll see you back next week on Brada's Branded Thoughts, his podcast. Thank you, Alex Brada.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back.
We'll see if we have you back.
Okay.
We'll see what the guests have to say. There's about 2 minutes left in this song, so we're gonna let this song run out by itself. And I wanted to add one more thing.
Adios.
I do know who I want to take me home. Good night, everybody.
Time for you to go out to the places you will be found. I know who I want to take me home. I know who I want to take me home. I know who I want to take me home. Take me home. Time. Every new beginning comes from some other